Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the ZeldaEngine.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. And sorry if I'm a little wet here, but I just took a shower because that's just sort of the reaction you have when you were previously knee-deep in frickin' mosquitoes, and then some of them get in your nose, and it's just a derpy Tektite. I think that's what it is. It's one word, so it's unclear, but I think it is a derpy Tektite. Asks, if you could have any Zelda item return, what would it be? I, for one, wish they would bring back the double claw shot. Well, the double claw shot did reappear in Skyward Sword, so, I guess it's sort of similar to my answer, because my answer is kind of odd. Mine, I actually would say the Pegasus boots. Now, the Pegasus boots have reappeared into quite a fulfilling capacity, I might add, in, in a lot of the handheld games, in particular Minish Cap and sort of the Oracle games through the Pegasus seeds, like boots to seeds. It's just sort of a weird transition, but whatever. But actually, what I want to see is I'd like to see the Pegasus boots in 3D. Now, again, this might sound odd because well, the Pegasus boots were one of those items like the flippers that are designed to give you an ability that you would normally have as a human being. And, in Skyward Sword, you can just, do the super run thing, so it's like, oh, those are Pegasus boots. And you can roll into things and to knock stuff down just like you could the Pegasus boots in Link Past. But I actually kind of think the Pegasus boots is more like a bull rushing item. You're really just charging in the straight direction, and you can't, avert your path or anything. You're just, running. And, I think I consider it much more of a real all-out run and being able to just bull rush into things. So I'd love to see something like that in a 3D Zelda game, because I don't feel like that's been a power that's been mimicked in a 3D Zelda game. Just this ability. I guess it doesn't have to be the Pegasus boots. It could still be like a stamina meter thing, but some ability to really just charge straight and just blow into things. I think that'd be really awesome. But tell me your guys in the comments. Daphnis No Hansen Hyrule, the most prestigious person to ever send a question in the mailbag, asks, has there ever been a moment in one of the games that was so difficult that you refused to progress and stopped playing the game? Well, there's a lot of moments throughout the series where I was like, ugh, I'm so sick of trying to figure this puzzle out. Well, not tons, but every so often. So I would actually go and, say, look up a walkthrough. But the only ones that actually make me stop playing, I still beat the game, but for an extended period of time, was in Oracle of Ages with the Goron dancing. Now, the ungraceful part here that isn't, the proudest moment in my gaming history is the fact that the part of the Goron dancing I was trying to do was actually completely optional, and I, for whatever stupid reason, did not realize that. So I was basically doing the ultimate highest level of the Goron dancing when I just wanted to progress with the quest. So, I don't know, extreme foolishness on my part, perhaps, but that was what made me stop playing Oracle of Ages for quite a while, so... Again, tell me your guys' most frustrating game-stopping moment in the comments. The Bobster asks, on the official timeline, Ocarina of Time splits off into 3 parts. How would you feel if another game split into more endings to accompany more games in the timeline? Do you think this would be overkill, or do you think it would be necessary? Definitely unnecessary. I think it'd be total overkill. I honestly think that the cop-out timeline, or the decline timeline if you prefer, is overkill in itself. I mean, really... it's a nice explanation in a lot of ways, and it does definitely let all those classic games have a real nice fitting place in the timeline, but I also feel like with just the slightest amount of retconning or explaining, you really could have fit them on the other 2 timelines quite easily, like after New Hyrule or anything of the sort. So, or just after Twilight Princess. So I really think that it was just unnecessary for them to add the 3rd timeline. I have no major beef about it anymore, but I do think it was a little silly. That's why I call it a cop-out, because it really was just thrown in there. So, yeah, I don't really think they need do any more timeline mess stuff. I actually think they should just give time travel a break in general, but, certainly I think that the time-splitting thing, just stop! ChadFan8989 asks, what kind of inventory would you like to see in an upcoming Zelda game? Would you like the smaller inventory like in Skyward Sword where the items are all very useful, or a vast array of items like in Twilight Princess where there are just so many to mess around with? Well, I'd also think, A Link to the Past is a better example of just having tons of little items, but not a lot of them do anything. Maybe that's not exactly what you meant, but it's kind of the trade-off to having really useful items. You have kind of a bunch of one-shot use items. I kind of prefer a proper balance where it feels like there's a lot of items, but they all have some reasonable uses. I think a lot of the N64 games, for example, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask were pretty good about this. I guess Majora's Mask had a lot of items with masks, though. Discounting masks. But, you know, I think that they're both pretty good. I think the main thing is I don't like it when there's just a ton of items that don't, like, do much. Like, if they're repeat items, like there were the shields in Link to the Past, or the medallions, they're just very similar items. Or if there's items that are just not used throughout the game, I don't like that. I like it as long as the items are used. If an item is not really useful at any point, it shouldn't be in the game. But if it's useful at a few points, yeah, you can have a bunch of items. I don't really mind that, as long as they have some uses. But having a few is cool too. It just doesn't feel like, oh, where's my huge inventory? So, but you know, they're both fine. CLBack03 asks, where would the new Zelda game, A Link Between Worlds, go in the Hyrule Historia timeline? Well, it's going nowhere in the Hyrule Historia timeline because that's already come out. But in the broader Zelda timeline, as they expand on it after Hyrule Historia, it's supposed to take place sometime after A Link to the Past. It's a sequel to A Link to the Past. And they've implied that it won't be the same Link or Zelda, so I'm going to suspect that it's going to be quite a while after, including after the Oracle games and Link's Awakening, because they feature the same Link, so if it's going to have a new Link, it's probably going to be well after. And I think it's going to just be sometime quite a bit later after A Link to the Past ends. Lucas Shoemaker asks, I was thinking of who would be the major antagonist in Zelda 3DS. I thought it would be cool if they brought back Vaati, but what do you think? I actually did an article about this recently. I think that it's most likely they're probably just going to do Ganon or something like that, and most likely after that they'll probably just have a completely brand new villain. I don't think Vaati's very likely. But what I was really hoping for, and I think there's some chance of it, but I don't think Nintendo is really that likely to expand on something like this. But I think it'd be really cool if it was like the Nightmare, like it haunts Link, and since Link was the Triforce holder, he, you know, corrupts the Dark World or whatever, because the nightmares like followed him and still in his soul, and it's corrupting the sacred realm of the Dark World through him. But that wouldn't work really necessarily with the revelation that it's a different Link, unless, I don't know, it's somehow his son or his descendant was passed down through the bloodline. I don't know, like, it's probably unlikely at this point, but probably Ganon or a completely new villain. I'm not sure any other villains are likely to return. Happy Mask Mystery asks, I heard from a friend that in Ocarina of Time, when you fight Ganondorf first stage, you can use a bottle to reflect his lightning attacks. Is that true? And if so, would you try this method of fighting Ganondorf? I've never tried it, but I've, like, no objection to. I might someday. But yeah, you can actually reflect his, you know, ball attack or whatever it is, back with the bottle. It's funny. It's probably, I don't know if that was intentional. I don't feel like it is. I think it was more likely that they just programmed the swinging of the bottle similar to the sword, so it just worked. Yeah, certainly, you can definitely do that. It's an odd little thing. Frostshade asks, what is your opinion about the resemblance of the Majora's Mask and the combined Fused Shadows? Do you think the Fused Shadows could have been part of a full shadow armor of sorts somehow? No, the Fused Shadow was its own, like, full item. They made it clear that it was, like, those are all the pieces of the Fused Shadow. Like, but as for the resemblance to Majora's Mask, this is something people talk about a lot, and I think a lot of people connect it to the whole Dark Tribe thing. The idea that, like, for a lot of reasons, but also because the Dark Interlopers talked about in the Twilight Princess, you know, backstory, the description was very similar to the Dark Tribe talked about in Four Swords Adventures and a few other games. And some people like to think that, like, maybe the ancient tribe that had Majora's Mask and in Majora's Mask was similar or related. You know, there's a lot of theories on this. I kind of buy into it. I think that there is some affiliation in terms of the tribes, but there's nothing certain, there's nothing clear, but it is interesting to think about because that eye on the Fused Shadow is pretty much the Majora's Mask eye. Then again, it's also just a freaky eye, maybe that's all they were going for, so it could just be reading way too much into it. But I am sort of a crazy Dark Tribe theorist, so there's that. Ganon Link asks, I recently played the original Majora's Mask, and I was wondering who you think the protruding hand from the toilet might be. A very, very unlucky soul. Gruffy Nutters 1656 asks, do you think that the hand in the toilet from Skyward Sword has any connections with the Oracle of Ages and Majora's Mask incarnations of Link? Because the hand, also known as ... clearly says, you are a kind soul, we shall meet again. Kind of makes you think. Well, I don't really think that they intended it to be the same hand. I think they just well, it's common phrasing, we'll meet again, you know. I guess it could be like an intentional thing, sort of like how Fi says, I think something along those lines. And it's just like all the links later in the timeline will pick up the Master Sword or whatever. But, you know, I'm just inclined to think it was intended to be a reference, not the same character, because it seemed like the other hands were male, they looked male, and they also looked physical, whereas the hand in Skyward Sword was female and a ghost. So, I don't know. I just don't buy it the same. Alright, last question. Locky Dowd asks, if you could have a cameo appearance in a Zelda game, would you? Well, let's see here. You know, if I was going to be in a Zelda game, it pretty much would have to only be in the Curiosity Shop, because, you know, this is kind of the Curiosity Shop. But, you know, like, the only times we were likely to ever see the Curiosity Shop again is in either a remake of Majora's Mask or a full-on sequel with, like, continuation of the story and whatnot. And I don't really necessarily care to see one of those things, so, nah. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I would totally want to be. Alright, guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions to the contact information in the description, and I'll see you guys later. Evil S asks, can this question be included in the bloopers section of the mailbag? Yeah, sure.